Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 ASVSU and IESC debates hosted by The Arbiter, your student-run newspaper on campus. I'm Taylor Rico Peckerell, the editor-in-chief, and we will begin the debates with the Secretary of Student Organizational Affairs, then Academic Affairs, then Vice President of Inclusive Excellence, Student Council, and end with President and Vice President questions. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to a question, and the president and vice president tickets will have 90 seconds total to answer. So if you both want to answer a certain question, you will need to split that time up. Candidates will be given a 30-second rebuttal if they are named directly by an opposing candidate. At the end of the questions, we will ask candidates a few questions from the attendees, if there is time. Attendees can submit questions, but not all of them will be able to be answered. So candidates will be given those questions afterwards and can follow up on their own time. Candidates answering questions along with the 90-second response will be given a 15-second warning for when your time is up. And we're going to start with the Vice President of Academic Affairs, candidates Graf Kirk and Soren Witter. So our first question from the Arbiter is, can you explain your platform, goals, and why you decided to run? And Graf, if you wanted to go first, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to say that it is so wonderful to see all the viewers who are tuning in tonight. I've spoken with a lot of people you'll hear from tonight, and hearing this much engagement is really something that we're all really excited about. My platform is to make sure that we're pursuing academic excellence, advocacy, and exemplary leadership, all while being respectful of one another. One of the big issues that I want to tackle is probably something you've heard of recently. The Idaho Legislature is looking for reasons to defund our university, and we need to make sure that that conversation is happening with student voices involved, not just a few, but everyone. So my job is to ensure that we're representing our students, not just in classes, not just with faculty, but to those outside factors as well.
Thank you, Graf. Soren, do you want to answer the same question?
Yes, thank you. And so as far as my campaign is concerned, the biggest issues I want to solve are just our quality of education. We're all paying thousands upon thousands of dollars to be here, and we deserve to have the best education possible, because I mean, there's two reasons why we're doing this. We're trying to get careers, and some of us are trying to delay life by 4 years. So I don't want to be an adult yet. And so I definitely believe we need to get the best experience possible. And I want people to hear Boise State and not just think about blue turf. I want them to think, oh, wow, that's a school that can compete with the UCs or MIT or whatever. I want our school to be on the map for its academics and not just the blue turf.
Thank you. And our next question is, what has been your single biggest struggle during your time at Boise State? And Soren, if you wanted to start this time.
My biggest struggles do have to do with one of my problems and solutions that I have, and that is I always struggle with keeping track of all the information that professors and advisors throw at us. That was one of the big reasons why I originally wanted to run for this position, because I was adding it up. I counted, what was it, 10 communication websites that we use, and multiple, like I counted up to 3 for one class, and things like that are not necessary. And then as I did more research, there was other things that other students were concerned about that I felt needed to be solved because they were struggling. And for example, 100 level classes, I felt like I've struggled harder in those than I have my 300 level courses, which doesn't make sense to me. And so those are kind of the hot spots where I was struggling.
Thank you. And Graf?
Yeah, my biggest struggle has been connection. I am a transfer student so last fall was my first semester here. I've been a resident of Boise for over 8 years at this point. So it was great to come home. But that being said, being a transfer student has been really hard to connect, especially in the time of coronavirus when we're also dispersed. And, we're used to having an elbow partner that we can lean over and talk about our day or ask a question about the homework. I miss that so much. I've had connection problems there. That's why I joined ASBSU, is to find a way to get involved, a way to give back to this community that's welcomed me so much. I'm very grateful for Boise State for that. And the other thing is, in this political environment that we're in, there's been some issues with connection there, being able to have open dialogues about things, to talk about the difficult things, right? To speak our minds, without having without it becoming a fight. We want to be able to connect and have good conversations in that way. So yeah, with my campaign, I am looking to make sure we are finding that way to connect both in the classroom and as friends and as people with different opinions.
Thank you. Next question is, how has your experience as an involved student at Boise State University thus far prepared you for the role of Secretary of Student Organizational Affairs? And Graf, if you wanted to answer this one first.
Yeah, so for those of you who do not know already, I'm the current Vice President of Academic Affairs. So I was elected in an emergency election to fill a vacancy in the role. I had previously been a senator. And so something I can bring in is not just the experience of being the Vice President of Academic Affairs, but being a senator. And as Vice President of Academic Affairs, your job is to lead the Senate. So understanding the senators is really key. Knowing what it's like, what they go through, and respecting that what they do is a volunteer role. My experience has ranged from talking with students directly, working with senators, working with advisors, serving on the General Education Committee, serving on the Student Activity Fee Advisory Board, as well as communicating directly with senators and representatives downtown about our education. So I think I bring a lot of different experiences to this, and I feel very prepared for this role.
Thank you. And Soren, how has your experience prepared you for this role?
Similar to what Graf was saying, I've also experienced many different roles at this university. Being a student, helping instruct, as I was a math tutor at one point, teaching anything from pre-algebra up to Calc 3. And that allowed me to interact with a lot of students and see what kind of education they were getting. And it was kind of sad that what I got to see, considering I was instructing more than the professors seemed to be. But anyway, I'm also a part of quite a few clubs, most of them being engineering, a couple of the political ones, just to see what everybody's talking about because I don't watch the news. But I also interact quite a bit with people in fraternities and sororities. And so I have a general idea of all these groups. And through those experiences of getting to speak with people, I have a very wide range of views in my mind about what can be improved here at this university and ways to maybe even include campus organizations with ways to improve our academics.
Thank you. And so the next question is, how do you intend to shape the current process of academic affairs to further help students? And Soren, if you wanted to start this one.
Yeah, so upon talking to many other clubs, one idea that came out that I really liked was improving the evaluations that we do at the end of the semester. And instead of doing them maybe at the end of the semester, maybe doing them monthly or maybe less than that, find a nice sweet spot of frequency where it's not to the point where students will ignore them, but they actually feel like their concerns are being met. Because I've had some professors that do this on their own, and I will say that those are some of my best professors. So that was one idea that had come out. Another one is, as I suggested earlier, there's a lot of third-party websites that I think are very unnecessary. I've worked with Vice Provost of Academic Affairs, Dr. Susan Shadle, on this one, and she and I put together like a list to give to President Trump to work on. And those are a couple of the big ones. Another idea was maybe using clubs to give people experience, because I noticed that was a big one when speaking to different clubs and groups, that number one, club retention rates are terrible. And number two, a lot of students feel like they're not getting a good introduction to what their careers are going to be. For example, with me with engineering, I didn't feel like I got a great experience. And a good way to solve that is if I were to join one of the clubs that are engineering based. I feel like that idea could be applied across all majors, and that gives you a good introduction to what you'll be doing.
Thank you, Graf.
Yeah, to change the process of academic affairs, I guess my biggest thing is making sure that there aren't outside influences like downtown at the Capitol who are trying to interrupt the academic affairs that we have been working on as Boise State, and trying to affect that solidarity. You know, I voted with my feet and my tuition to be here. I want a complete education, and I intend to get that. So the first thing on my list is to make sure that we're having that conversation and securing funding, and not letting outside influence change what we teach here at Boise State. As for the process itself, I think it starts with not just communicating with students, but being prepared to do that work. You know, I like that Soren had that idea of, hey, we have some stuff going on where we need to simplify our platforms online. So he reached out to Susan Shadle. That's amazing. We need stuff like that. We need to be able to just not just start that conversation, but be prepared to follow through. I've worked this job for just a couple months here, and I bill for 10 hours a week. But I guarantee if you sat over my shoulder with a stopwatch, it would probably be almost double that in the amount of effort, the time put into thinking about it. So really the follow through is what I want to focus on. Let's actually make sure that these things can happen and we have a plan to accomplish them.
Thank you. And the next question is, how will open education resources are becoming more common at Boise State every year. So how do you believe these resources play a role in a student's academic success? And please explain your position on open educational resources. And Graf, if you wanted to start.
Taylor, would you mind defining open academic resources for me, please?
Yeah, open educational resources are just free educational resources for students, whether it be access to different journals, books, whatever that material might look like for a student's class.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that is a great question. So this week, I am working on a capstone paper for my communications in biology. And I needed a paper from a journal called Cell or STEM. Is Cell Stem Cell is what it's called. It's a really interesting journal, but we didn't have access to it. I had to email my professor and ask her to email a friend at Pfizer to get this journal for me so I could use it in my report. That's ridiculous. We should have access to those things. Those are very important pieces of information. And if we want to upgrade our academic standing, then we should have access to that as well. I totally am open to pursuing more open academic resources in my term.
Thank you. And Soren?
Yeah, 100%. I support having more open information. Good way that Graf worded that. Because that was another issue that I had I had discovered upon talking to people, and it was one that I've experienced that I didn't really even think about, and that is, once again, the third-party websites we use, quite a few of them you have to pay for. And one thing that drives me nuts is one of my textbooks in a class where my professor said to save it because you'll need it eventually, it expired. And I'm like, what was the point of that? I paid $90 for a resource I can't keep. If you're not going to let me keep it, why am I paying for it? Like, you're situations like that where you can't get access to information in the future. Why even include it? Why have it? I think it's very important that people have better access to this information, because that's why we're here. We're here to learn more information.
Thank you. And our last question will be, how will you work to improve faculty-student relationships across campus? And Soren, if you wanted to start.
Yes. So I wanted to, one thing that I heard from a couple of the senators I spoke to is that the system for communication between certain departments in the Senate, there's not a very good standardized, I guess, system for it. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I was told that by senators, and I figure that's probably a pretty big thing to fix and have going on, because we need a way to get the information we need to know for each department to improve. Another thing is that I think we need to foster a better culture of not being afraid to speak to authority. Professors are above, like, not above us, but they deserve the respect, because I mean, they've gone through master's programs, doctorates, whatever it is. I'm not saying we be rude to them or anything, but I think here on campus, we need to figure out a way to communicate to our professors and not be afraid to ask questions, because from my experience, there's one or two kids that don't mind asking questions, and I'm usually one of those kids, but it's hard. It is not easy. And I think a lot of students in those courses will come to me or the other students and ask us the questions that they had. I'm like, no, we've gotta foster a culture where we're willing to ask, or like I did, go to Dr. Shadle. We need to do something like that.
Great, Graf.
Yeah, Soren made some great points. I like that he talked to some senators already. I can tell you as a senator, as a former senator and the leader of the Senate, that we do need to define the process of speaking with your dean. That is a really important person to our college, someone who gets to lead and define the goals, the vision for a lot of students on campus. I had the pleasure of speaking with my dean as a senator, and it was great, but we should get senators started on that. You know, personally, I serve on the General Education Committee, which meets Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. And I get to work with a lot of professors who are really involved and really care about what they do. You know, I served on that before I was elected to my position. It's not something I'm duty bound to. It's something I really care about. I want to make sure that we have students on these committees. There are so many positions that people fought really hard to have student voices in, yet they're sitting empty. That's ridiculous. If student voices want to be heard, if we want to improve faculty relationships, we have to start those conversations, and we need to make sure that our leadership is connecting students to those roles. There are hiring boards coming up, interim deans, there's 3 of them coming up. We need to have students on those boards and making those decisions so that we have a relationship with the faculty.
Thank you both for answering those questions. And as clarification for attendees, both these candidates are running for Vice President of Academic Affairs. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Graf and Soren. We're going to kick it over to Vice President of Student Organizational Affairs. So I'm going to welcome Kayla Magana up to the debate stage. I am Ashley Clark, the online editor for The Arbiter, and I will be moderating these next few questions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and yeah.
All right, awesome, Kayla. So we'll jump right into it. If you want to explain your platform goals and why you decided to run for this position.
Thank you. So my platform is to increase student engagement with not only their clubs, but also with ASBSU. I really want to encourage clubs to share their ideas and encourage them to apply, and those are my main goals. And I guess the main reason why I am applying for this position or running for this position again is because I held this position last semester and I absolutely loved working with multiple clubs on campus. We funded over 50 clubs and it was such an amazing opportunity to work with them individually and in a group level. And I really want to continue to be a support system and to hear their ideas and to be able to support them and watch them come to life.
Great. And then moving forward, what has been your single biggest struggle during your time at Boise State?
My single biggest struggle has definitely been moving onto this online platform. A lot of my classes were virtual and still are. And also with the funding board, all of our hearings were in person. So I think the main challenge that we found was that those building that connection with the people we worked with. And even though it is still a challenge now, I have learned how to communicate more efficiently through it and how to navigate those conversations. And even though Zoom can be kind of awkward at times, it has been an awesome growing and learning opportunity.
Our next question is, how has your experience as an involved student at Boise State thus far prepared you for the role of Secretary of Student Organizational Affairs?
So my experience, kind of backtracking, I had this position last semester. And again, I have learned so much. I don't even know where to begin. But I think the biggest thing that I learned was I learned how to grow my communication skills, my understanding of how to communicate with different students and how to navigate those hard conversations. Because there was a time in the beginning last fall where the guidelines and state guidelines kept changing on what clubs couldn't and could do with things such as travel and just certain caps on amounts of virtual conferences. And I think all of that experience has really equipped me to go into this next year a lot more hopeful and a lot more ready to have these difficult conversations. Because even though we were challenged a lot, we always found a way. There was always a way through it or around it. And we were able to have a really somewhat successful semester, I should say.
All right, and our next question, how do you intend to shape the current funding processes for student organizations?
Yeah, so I intend to make it a lot more accessible and a lot easier of a process. These last few weeks, I was meeting with my advisor, America, and what we did is we took the application, and I guess I don't know what the correct word would be, but we kind of made it a little bit more simpler. We took out sentences that we didn't feel necessary. We try to keep it to minimum amount of questions. And I just kind of want to keep that going, making sure that the application is accessible, that students feel comfortable at all times, and that this whole process doesn't feel intimidating or hard. I really want to keep a safe and comfortable space for students.
So there will likely be times that organizations or individuals approach you with funding requests that you are unable to provide them with. How will you approach communicating the denial to the individual or the organization applying?
This actually did happen a few times, and what I like to do is I like to have a one-on-one with the student and make sure that they understand why the funding wasn't able to go through and what we can do about it. What else can we fund? So I think it's just important to have that conversation where the student understands the circumstances and understands that that isn't the only answer, that we can do more.
How do you plan to increase accessibility and transparency in the funding process for student organizations and individual grants?
So I plan to do this by just kind of to continue what we've been doing, which is marketing on social media and letting students know that there is funding. And all our minutes and our meetings are public, so we are transparent in that way. And yeah.
Where do you believe the university has the most room for improvement when it comes to supporting student organizations, and how do you intend to help solve that problem?
I think the main thing that I would like to see improvement on is communication, within like communication and understanding student needs. And the way I plan to address this is to definitely take student feedback and take that perspective and to communicate that to my higher ups and to see where we can meet halfway.
Great, and then we have one question from our Q&A chat function here. So this is from an attendee. How do you plan to encourage more student involvement?
I plan to encourage more student involvement by letting students know. I think the reason, let me backtrack a little bit. So we did get a fair amount of applications in the beginning, but they kind of died down midways. And I think that's because student orgs don't really know what they can and can't do right now, especially with COVID was a really weird time. So a way that I plan to increase that is to really, so whether it be social media or emails or updates, I really want to let students keep them updated on what they can do, on ideas, maybe even table with them, and just kind of keep the conversation going.
Great, thank you so much, Kayla. We're going to introduce our next moderator to go into the following questions for the VP of Inclusive Excellence.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maddie and I'm the news reporter for The Arbiter. And this next section is for Vice President of Inclusive Excellence, and it is with Sarah Mandura and Grace Bergert. I apologize if I butchered those names. So the first question is just to explain your platform goals and why you decided to run. Sarah, would you like to go first?
Yes, I can gladly go first. The biggest push for me that made me want to run is when I started, like COVID-19 started, and I began to understand how racial disparities worked in the healthcare system. Um, Seeing students kind of being reckless with their actions and knowing that COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting marginalized communities was just something that I knew needed to be changed, and I wanted to help make that change. So that is the largest aspect of my platform, and that's the biggest thing that inspired me to run. And along with that, just seeing how, like showing students how oppression is present in every single aspect of their lives. So specifically with COVID-19 mask wearing, but also environmental justice aspects. And just, I also wanna be able to help collaborate with students in their initiatives to result in better like understanding of oppression. And along with that, establishing relationships with community partners and kind of creating mentorships along with them and opening up volunteer opportunities to them in the community.
Thank you, Sarah. Grace, would you like to go next?
Of course, thank you. So my platform is that I want to grow community and educate our student community. I have seen a lot of discourse on campus about who has privilege while also not understanding intersectionality and the many systems of oppression that Sarah had mentioned. And because of this, my platform therefore makes my goal to show the benefits of, quote, social justice, because I truly believe in our student community's empowerment. And while there's multiple projects and goals that I am working towards right now as being part of the IESC, such as collaborating with student union building with showcasing art that represents our Indigenous land, or advocating for more accessibility along our sidewalks by adding railing, this can only happen if our university truly values inclusivity, diversity, and equity. And if we don't get that support, then as Sarah also said, we will have to reach out to community members, and we're gonna have to reach out into the Boise community. And that is gonna be my goal, because I have seen this year, and this is my primary motivation for running, the harm that our student organizations, programs, and resources have been under because of this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. The next question is, how has your experience at Boise State University thus far prepared you for the role of Vice President of Inclusive Excellence? Grace, you can go first this time.
Thank you. So last year, when I was a freshman, I joined the IESC as part of their assembly. And because of this, I learned so much about intersectionality, non-binary identity, sexuality, and race. I also learned about how the university and ASBSU navigates through diversity and inclusion, and I understand the harms that have been done because of that. And so as I'm coming into this role, I think that because of that knowledge, it will help me navigate and also advocate for marginalized communities and marginalized identities that struggle to get this access and struggle to actually be accessible and to be represented in the way that they need to be. I also am an RA currently right now, so I have been facing the COVID pandemic firsthand, and I understand how, to build community within this type of situation. And I think that skill in itself is truly important, as long as also being involved with multiple organizations and student clubs, which allows me to hear stories from students and also learn about their experiences. All of this combined kind of makes it great to build community with people. And I think that building that community is the most important thing, because without it, we're not going to be able to actually understand each other, to communicate, or to be represented in the values that we care about.
Thank you, Grace. Sarah, you can go ahead.
I believe the largest thing in my experience at Boise State University that prepares me for this role is the types of courses I'm taking, specifically in gender studies courses. From there, coming from a smaller town in Idaho and coming to Boise and seeing the way that intersectionality affects others and how like you can grow and interact with others through intersectionality, as well as how to navigate different identities and how to navigate being a good active ally rather than just passive. And also within that, making relationships with my classmates, learning from each other. And as Grace said, building community is, I think, the largest aspect. So seeing all the communities that are present for Boise State University, that are present, that show them, like you can see yourselves in them, such as for me, I am a child of immigrants, and seeing the Diaspora Club has helped me gratefully. Going to the Gender Equity Center, everything like that. Having that sense of community and having those good relationships with the people in charge of them is what I believe will allow me to make a good VPI.
Thank you, Sarah. The next question is, how do you plan to hold Boise State accountable for existing diversity and inclusion-based initiatives? And Sarah, you can go first.
I think the biggest aspect will have to be having open conversations, having students communicate to us that things are wrong, and being proactive about those things, and making sure that Boise State is providing us space to have these conversations, providing spaces for individuals to grieve and heal through things that are happening. And I also believe that just having these open conversations with Boise State as a whole, just telling them what's going on and keeping them updated, will also allow us to create good relationships with Boise State.
Thank you, Sarah. Grace, you can go.
Yeah, I think first it's important to understand the relationship that we have with Boise State right now. Currently, Boise State is in a bit of a pickle. They have the legislation basically breathing down their back about social justice and how they are allowing for diversity and inclusion and equity to, quote, ruin our education and our experience as college students. And so this is an incredibly difficult position to be in, because the people who get hurt the most, who get harmed the most, are the students. And so I think that for this relationship to continue to work, for this relationship to be open, and for anything for us to get done, is that we're going to have to branch out to the university and push them to come to the table with us, bring us to the table and uplift us, so that we can actually get our voices out there and not be punished for using our voices. I think that in the last year, we've seen how this has happened and how the harm has been done when the university has backed out from actually supporting its student voices. And so I think pushing the university to understand why students are being harmed, and also why their voices are being silenced in their inaction because of their position, I think is crucial. I still do have compassion for the university though, and so I am willing to work through them with how we can navigate both the legislature and also university policy, where we can come together and make it the best for our students who are in this position right now.
Thank you. One moment. Okay. Sarah, how do you plan to hold Boise State accountable for existing diversity and inclusion-based initiatives?
I believe the best option is just keeping open communication with Boise State, keeping them liable for things that we've agreed on, and also just having, as Grace said earlier, having compassion for them. None of us are going into this hating Boise State University. We're going in for this to help make better change, to leave students for the next years to come with a better location than what they found. I also believe communicating with club members and team leaders in order to better get along with communication and ideas I have. So specifically ideas that I have for this is discussing with health clubs and talking about racial disparities and how we can better make initiatives against COVID-19 suit everyone. Along with, we can talk to climate change clubs and sustainability clubs and talk about how BIPOC communities can be more, we can get students more involved in how BIPOC communities are affected with sustainability and environmental justice. But I think another large thing and the biggest thing I can think of is reaching out to students specifically, rather than waiting for them to come talk to us. And just knowing that we have the students on our side when we talk to Boise State about these things is, I think, crucial.
Thank you, Sarah. The next question is, after the threat of defunding of campus diversity and inclusion initiatives by Idaho legislators, how do you hope to approach providing access to diversity programs on campus? And Sarah, you can answer first.
Providing for university initiatives on campus, I believe we'll just have to have open conversations. I know I keep going back to that, but I truly think that communicating and having this relationship established with Boise State is what will like make or break this. I also think we'll just have to like kind of be creative with that. So discussing with people in charge of those things, how we can make this, if we can't get funding through, what are other options? And I think also just making sure that we're still talking to our legislature. They can make decisions, but we can still always try to fight back. And because I mean, social funding is kind of like what made my Boise State education so great, was getting my sociology and gender studies classes. And I don't want the following students to miss out on those opportunities.
Thank you, Sarah. Grace?
Would you mind repeating that question one more time?
Yeah. After the threat of defunding of campus diversity and inclusion initiatives by Idaho legislators, how do you hope to approach providing access to diversity programs on campus?
So as I mentioned before, there are actually a lot of community in Boise that is offering support and wellness for these communities that are suffering. As for education, I think that's a discussion that, again, we're gonna have to be having with the university and be working with them and trying to find a way that we can prioritize it, because it is important for the development of, individuals, and also for when we go out and to the workforce and have to deal with multiple types of people. I think that also within the Boise State, we have to establish that diversity, inclusion, and equity are important. The IESC is important. These student organizations like the Gender Equity Center and the Student Equity Center are important to our student community. I feel like they have not been valued as much this year as they have in the past years, where I have gone in there and I've talked to people and met people who have given me connections and all the benefits of a community that can give. So looking at this, I think there is some type of push that we still have to have on the university, and that is by not becoming tokenized by them and to actually have them initiate and finish their diversity, inclusion, and equity accountability that they told our student population that they would have.
Thank you, Grace. The next question is, what are some of the ways you would incorporate student voice and involvement on campus regarding diversity programs? Grace, you can go first.
I'm so sorry, can you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah. What are some of the ways you would incorporate student voice and involvement on campus regarding diversity programs?
So these diversity programs are already in play. They're open to everyone. Usually what happens is that we have all these clubs and organizations that hold events. And so these events typically aren't, I guess, advertised as much as some other community and campus events that we have. So my first priority would be to advocate and advertise for those events for everyone to show up, because I feel like for a lot of these events, people feel like they're not meant to be there, even though it's meant for the whole campus to enjoy and to learn and to grow together. I also think that we could increase the funding and look at the funding on how we can actually help these individuals get the materials and resources that they need to build upon these events. And to also look into, what our faculty is doing, looking at, the types of training they have and the support system that they can have for our students. Therefore, then they can have a more academic lead on these things when they're creating their learning, their lesson plans and everything like that.
Thank you, Grace. Sarah?
Yeah, so my number one thing would be just to directly reach out to the students and find out what is working for them and what is not working for them in these organizations, specifically because those are the people that are being benefited by the presence of them. I also think talking with the members and leaders of them and seeing what needs to change for them, not only within their club, but on campus to exist comfortably is also an essential aspect. As Grace said, I also think that it's important to look at what the training of the faculty is, seeing what biases are present within, and just kind of teaching them about different things that are being affected by students. So how intersectionality works and how like empathy affects your communication with your students. And I also want, as Grace said, to increase funding just so that these people can exist comfortably on our campus within their clubs and with outside of them as well. And also just encouraging support. I know when I first started at Boise State, I didn't want to go to any clubs or meetings because I just felt nervous and like I didn't belong. But having like advocates for them and saying that all are welcome and showing other people and yourselves being there, and that's like a comfortable environment, will include and increase student activity.
Thank you, Sarah. This next question is a two-part question. How would you describe the relationship between inclusion and excellence? And then what kinds of leadership efforts would you undertake to encourage a commitment to excellence through inclusion? And Sarah, you can go first.
Thank you. So I think inclusion and excellence exist on the same plane. Excellence in academia doesn't exist unless inclusion is present for all students. We must make an academic environment that all students can comfortably exist in and get an education without any sort of fear because of their identities. Could you repeat the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what kinds of leadership efforts would you undertake to encourage a commitment to excellence through inclusion?
Okay, thank you. I don't have any prior experience with the IESC, but I do know that I think it's an advantage that I can kind of learn how things are happening within and also communicate that to students. As I understand how appeals are working and we're making bills and we're training the IESC, talking to students about what is happening, creating these relationships so they don't feel in the dark at all in any aspect of what is occurring for the advocates of them, and just ensuring that they all understand that, as was the prior question, inclusion, and excellence are existing on the same plane and that we are working to ensure that.
Thank you, Sarah. Grace?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. How would you describe the relationship between inclusion and excellence? And then the second part is, what kinds of leadership efforts would you undertake to encourage a commitment to excellence through inclusion?
So the relationship between inclusion and excellence is, as Sarah had mentioned, you need to have inclusion in order to have excellence. When we have diversity, when we have new ideas coming in, when we have new thoughts and new perspectives, that is when we all can reach excellence. And that is what makes the student, the inclusive Student Excellence Council run, is promoting that to our student population. In terms of, can you repeat that second part of the question?
Yes. What kinds of leadership efforts would you undertake to encourage a commitment to excellence through inclusion?
Yeah, so this is basically trying to get more voices and more accessibility to students. I do have prior experience with IESC and ASBSU, and I have been frustrated and I've been seeing how much the structure and the system of both ASBSU and the university can be very difficult to navigate. And so it would be trying to figure out how we can restructure, how we can explain and understand these structures in order to get more representation, in order to get more voices. We have an open committee right now that we're still trying to fill. We have 3 out of the 5 members for assembly, and it's hard to find people who are willing to put themselves in this position, because as of right now, it is very harmful to be on the ISC. It's very harmful to be advocating for these types of values because of the way that there's pressure from outside, and also the internal stress that the university has that transfers to the students.
Thank you, Grace. This next question is, what types of sustainable policy do you intend to create to ensure an inclusive campus at Boise State? And Grace, you can go first.
Yeah, so actually, with the Sustainability Club, they have started these workshops called Environmental Justice. And so, what this is talking about is how we have environmental racism. This means that we have populations of students and of people who suffer the most from climate change and the effects that we have on this earth, but are doing the least amount to contribute to it. And so we're looking at these communities, and these communities are usually, lower class, they're indigenous, they're people of color that are suffering the most. And so we're looking at things such as food deserts. On campus last year, we had a food desert, I would say, because we didn't have accessibility to food for some of the dorms. That had been resolved when we got more pods, but then again, we can look at those pods and look at the nutrition values within that food and try to figure out, well, is that actually the most nutritious food that we can have in order to fuel our bodies? So food deserts are one thing. Looking at how we can promote the Sustainability Club and how we can promote this conversation about how it affects not only our Boise State population, our Boise community, Idaho, but the more wider perspective of the world. Coming into this year, we've had some horrible climate change crises that have happened around just the United States. And so I think it's really important to have that discussion about environmental justice, about environmental racism, because it's affecting people more so than other people because of the privileges and oppression systems that we've built into our society.
Thank you, Grace. Sarah?
I definitely agree with what Grace first said about how we should be taking advantages of the workshops that are provided by the clubs. I see all these posts on Instagram about from the Sustainability Club and the Environmental Club, and I believe that showing through your student leaders ways that you can be more effective in sustainability will definitely be an amazing way to show that to students. I also believe having these communications with marginalized individuals that are being heavily affected by the disparities in environmentalism, and seeing for them what they believe works best, what struggle is present for them the most, and how we can make those go away on campus, and also showing our classmates this is what's happening environmentalism is something that's so beyond an individual, something so beyond like yourself that it's affecting individual communities specifically because of little actions. I also believe that if we show these clubs in action on campus and encourage the movement that they're doing and also the ways that they're meeting outside of campus, and just we like show them the power that these clubs can hold, and we have their student leaders talk with them, that we can encourage some students to join there.
Thank you, Sarah. These next questions are from our attendees, and the first question is, what groups do you identify as marginalized on campus, and what are the exact steps you will take to improve equity, diversity, and inclusion for those individuals? And Sarah, you can go first.
So for marginalized groups, those are typically defined as groups that are seen outside the norm. So essentially any individual that isn't a white man who is straight is essentially a marginalized group. When discussing marginalized groups, it is important to think about intersectionality as well. So while a man that is white, he might not be cisgender, and that is something that we also must consider. No identity within marginalized communities is more valued than another. One thing that we must do is talk to our students about what is not working for them on campus, and then talk with the students that may not necessarily identify with these marginalized groups about what actions can be taken and how their actions are negatively affecting our students and how we can make them more positive. I also believe encouraging club initiations more, talking more with our clubs and their members inside, and seeing what from the inside we can do out to make Boise State as a whole better, as well as talking with our student leaders again and having them lead discussions with our students about with students that would not necessarily typically get involved, about ways that they can help make simple changes.
Thank you, Sarah. Grace?
So for marginalized communities on campus, these are groups of people and organizations and students who don't have power. And so when we're looking at this, we need to be understanding how we can even out that power and give that power back to them. This year, we've seen many student groups who have actually, been silenced, who have been removed, who have also been not welcomed on our campus because of the rhetoric and because of the initiatives that the university has had. So my priority would be, reaching out to them, showing them support, being there with them, understanding their clubs, going to their events. I fully partake in so many different groups, and I have so many friends and people that I care about who don't have this power anymore. And I've seen how they used to be these leaders, these people on campus that I looked up to, but now because of the treatment that they've had, they've left completely. Their presence is no longer here, and I think that is a great loss. And so creating an environment and a space where we can have this community is my priority. And so looking at that, we have to be looking about the structure of our university. We have to be looking about how accessible we're making information, we're making people, we're making the policies that we can actually change. And if that doesn't happen, then we have to be looking about how we can support students who still exist within these communities by looking outside of our university community and reaching out to community partners who can provide that support and that comfort to people who feel like they don't belong on campus.
Thank you, Grace. This next question, that is also from one of our attendees, is how do you plan to hold the university accountable to its commitment of diversity and inclusion? And Grace, you can go first.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is to point out to all the paperwork and all the forms that the university has signed that have said that they are, their goal is to have inclusivity, equity, and diversity on our campus. And so pointing those out, I feel would help remind them. But again, if they do not take our communication, if we're communicating as hard as we can, we're speaking as loud as we can, and they still cannot move within the legislature, they can't move with us, they can't navigate with us, then we're going to have to find other alternatives in order to work with the university, work with our community members that are affected by all these policies and all these harms. And so that might look like creating something that might be outside the university, but that is recommended to university students. Because at the same time, when all these harms are happening, we still want to be supporting student communities. We still want to be providing that support. And so having these partnerships and having that outside influence of our own will help us basically have this community and also have the support networks that are truly needed. And then through that, that's where we get empowerment. That's where communities get the fuel and the energy that they need to come back into the university to learn and to navigate, this environment that can be harmful.
Thank you, Grace. Sarah?
I believe that the best way to do this would be to show our university how effective these efforts are. These aspects are part of a holistic education. They're not necessarily biased, as some of our legislators believe. They allow us to gain a holistic education of everything that's going on in the world. And I think showing our university how beneficial these different programs are, these different classes are, these different clubs are, how beneficial it is to have these resources with us will allow us to show the university better how we are taking advantage of these. I also think what Grace said, we must remind the university of what is necessary from them in inclusion, what's actually in the paperwork. And I think that's important to not let sweep under the rug, as well as to be aware of what is entitled to us as students, and having these conversations with students and showing them this is what we can do, and to take advantage of that.
Thank you, Sarah. And with that, that concludes our section of the Vice President of Inclusive Excellence, and we are going to move on to President and Vice President.
Yes, so the next candidates will be the Vice President and President tickets, which are Jacinta Rigi and AJ Mayer, Kenneth Houston and Sarah Smith, Eric Klein and Solin De Tassini. And so the first question will be, in 1 minute, can you explain your platform, goals, and why you decided to run? And we'll start with Eric Klein and Solin.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. It's great to see so much student involvement with this debate and the whole process in general. It's so exciting to see students get involved with ASBSU. To describe our campaign briefly is so tough because we have such a deep platform. We want to really kind of cover so many different points and give you guys specifics about what we're going to do once we get there. We don't want to just say we're going to have transparency. We want to give you actual ways we're going to improve transparency. But I'll do my best in the 30 seconds we have left. So first of all, we want to return student power, or ASBSU power, back to the students. We want to improve transparency and communication. We want to improve representation in elections, make sure that your guys' representatives are representative. And we want to make sure that coming out of COVID, all your favorite events and things come back. So that's really what I'm excited about.
Thank you. Jacinta and AJ, would you like to go next?
Hi, yeah. So our three main policies are action, commitment, and trust. We vow to take action on behalf of Boise State students. We're done with just all the talk that goes on and no acting. So we're ready to take action. We're prepared to be committed. We're committed to representing every single student's voice. And there are hundreds of students that have been silenced, and we're committed to making sure that their voices are heard no matter what. And we also want to make sure that the students can trust us, and we want to build that relationship with them. Our goal is for the students that we're representing to trust us, and we're going to do this by being open, and we're going to be honest with them about what we're working on. And yeah, we're ready to take any suggestions from the students.
Thank you. And Kenneth and Sarah?
Yeah, so my name is Kenneth Houston. I'm running for president, obviously. Our platform is all about student support services. What we saw this past year was ASBSU stray away from its core mission values of actually supporting students and advocating for students. And we have actionable things that we want to move forward with as soon as we would potentially be elected. And that means devoting funds to the campus food pantry. That means advocating for mental health. And there are things that we can do before next year to actually create a better a better structured campus support services. Outside of that, we want to remove the politics from student government. And I think that about sums it up. You know, we're running on experience, and that's what we're here to do.
Thank you. And going off of that, can you describe your previous leadership experience and how they have prepared you for these positions? And Kenneth and Sarah, if you want to start.
Yeah, awesome. So I am the current ASBSU ethics officer. I serve on a wide range of campus university committees. Our leadership style is in uplifting others to fulfill their missions. We are, as the president and vice president, we are not the only ones who are elected to this position. We want to empower the people around us and those who are not elected, you know, the student body who we are here to represent. We want to provide them the opportunity to get into the conversation. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I would love to. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Smith. I use she, her pronouns. As for experience, I am the current ASBSU Administrative Director, which means that I attend every single branch's meetings. We have 5 branches within ASBSU. So that means that I know all of the core purposes and missions of each branch and how to support them and help them achieve those missions and purposes. I am also the current chair of our Campus Food Pantry Committee. So ASBSU has a food pantry committee that helps plan all of the outreach events for the campus food pantry, such as Thanksgiving meal kits and mobile food pantry days, which we have one coming up that we're so excited for. And I also serve on the Food Service Advisory Committee, which is just starting to review our contract upcoming with Aramark and what we want to do in the future of dining services on campus. All of this experience together helps me know how to work with other people as well as with those student support services that we are adamantly supporting.
Thank you. Jacinta and AJ, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so AJ and I have not been in ASBSU before, and some people may think that's a con and not a pro, but we think it's a huge pro because we are coming from the outside and we have seen what has been happening with ASBSU, and we obviously haven't been happy. And we are coming from the students. We ourselves have been silenced, just like all these students have, by the Executive Council on ASBSU. And so us coming into it, we feel that ASBSU, the Executive Council, doesn't understand what it's like to be silenced, like AJ and I and all these hundreds of other students do feel like. So since we're coming on the outside, we feel like we can come on in and we can change that because we know what it feels like to be silenced, and we don't believe that they do.
Great, thank you. And Eric and Celine?
Hi, my name is Celinda Cassidy, and I'm going to be sharing my time with Eric, so I'll keep it brief. I currently serve as a member of the Academic Senate. I represent Kobe alongside Eric. I also serve on the Sustainability Committee, and I've currently been spearheading a project to deliver free menstrual cups to students across campus. I also served on the Strategic Planning Committee for Kobe, so I have a little bit of leadership experience outside of my relationship with ASBSU. But I also believe that our leadership experience has more to do with what we do with our community than necessarily the experiences that we don't have on exec. For example, we'll be trained to do those. So I've also worked as a debate coach and a judge for local high schools, as well as working with some local communities, like the local community projects like the Sierra Project, who work to make Boise more sustainable, more equitable. I will be turning over to Eric now so he can give his little spiel.
Awesome, thanks, Celine. So yeah, like Celine mentioned, I've gotten to serve as one of the senators for Kobe this year, which was such an awesome experience to serve side by side with Celine in an elected position. Previously, I served as the first year rep actually with Sarah last year, which was a really cool experience. So I've gotten to serve on the Senate, I've gotten to serve on the Assembly, I've spent time as a student. I understand the issues with ASBSU. We've had an opportunity to see what the problems are, but we also, having ASBSU experience, know how to fix them. It's going to take an insider to be able to fix the problems, but it takes an outsider to know the issues, and we think we really fit the bill.
Awesome, thank you. And the next question is, what initiatives or projects would you take on to emphasize the importance of accountability and transparency of student government? And Eric and Celine, if you want to start this one off.
Perfect. Yeah, this is such a great question because I think it's at the front of everyone's mind right now. Exactly how are we going to fix the issues that we know we have with ASBSU? And we've outlined so many different ways we're going to do that. With transparency, first of all, we need to start recording all of our meetings. Emails and communications need to be public for everyone to watch to make sure that they approve of what ASBSU is doing. We need to open up more lines of communication so that way students from across campus can come in and write their own bills and resolutions. There's no reason why some representative that you don't even know exists need to be writing bills and resolutions for you. We want to get the students involved as much as possible. That also means expanding elections. Okay, right now we get like, what, 5% of the student body voting? That's atrocious. We need to get it up to at least 25% by the end of our term. We really want to see students getting involved in the process. Only then can the students really expect to see results that they want. It's not up to just a few people just to represent the whole school. The school should be representing the school, and that's what we really want to get happen.
Great, thank you. And Kenneth and Sarah, do you want to go next?
Yeah, this is a great question. So one thing that we want to focus on and, have already done, I've created a collaboration between each of the college deans to host Senate elections. I need to get on to some of the deans if you haven't already gotten it. But we're hosting elections this year for the Senate. That's something that only Kobe did last year. We want elected positions to be able to emphasize and actually collect student voice and represent the students across campus. We have, like Eric said, a very small percentage of engaged students. That's something that has to be fixed. We've also been working on a project to create a standard email account for each of our senators and student representatives so between interim student representatives, there is no guessing game for students to get in contact. We always have a single email address for people to get in touch with, to express their concerns, to ask questions about what's happening in student government. And yeah, we want to expand everything. We already have a few processes we have a few processes that try to touch on being more transparent, but we want to also revamp the communications officer position. They need to be more in touch with the student body. We need to utilize our social media platforms. I think I'm out of time.
Thank you. Jacinta and AJ?
Yeah, so this whole question is basically why I got involved in the first place, because accountability and transparency is something that's sorely lacking, even through this current exec ASBSU board. The people that are on it, they're not doing their job. There's lots of things I'd like to implement. I could talk about this all day, but first off, we're ASBSU, we're students, we're no bigger. We shouldn't act as higher ups to students. We're students just like they are. They should know us personally. We should be friends to them. We shouldn't be we have to govern them, but we can't be acting as politicians. And we've seen way too much of that lately. And Jacinta's gonna chip in here.
Yeah, and I think some things that we can do, examples of us being transparent, is we have like a website for our campaign, and what we want to do is keep that website up for as long as we're running, and people can always come to it and comment what they want to see change. And also, I mean, as AJ said, we're students as well. Like, let's throw get-togethers. Let's like get together and we can all meet each other, and they can meet who is on the ASBSU, so we can hold like a pizza party or something, and they can really be able to talk to us and tell us what they're going through at the school, what they want to see change at Boise State. And yeah, let's make it fun. We're all students here. We're no higher than they are.
Thank you. And the next question is, what has been your single biggest struggle during your time at Boise State, and how have you overcome it? And Jacinta and AJ, if you guys want to go first.
Yeah, so my biggest struggle personally has actually been just in the last year. Some of my classes are getting very hard, and switching over to this online format has not been easy. So adapting to that has been my biggest challenge so far.
Same thing, is definitely online has been really hard, but I think like we've been saying, this whole cancel culture and silencing has definitely been hard too this past year, and it's definitely, we've seen it grow, and we've seen it's now in the public now, and so that's been something we've been trying to fight through. I mean, I've have students that message me all the time every day and say that this is still happening, so that's a struggle that's going on at Boise State, not just online being hard. Every day students going to class and being scared that they can't be themselves, that's should never happen at a college, and that's happening at Boise State University, and AJ and I are here to stop that.
Thank you. Eric and Celine.
Hi, that is a very loaded question. And as it's been elaborated on by the previous answers, a big issue is COVID and the disconnect that it's created. But on a larger note, COVID's also allowed for us to argue with each other over screens, which has subsequently led to a greater divide in our political beliefs. A divide that's kind of become the crux of ASBSU at this point. I mean, we've all heard about the impeachments. We're all here because we want to increase transparency. But as we watch this divisiveness split our campus apart and we grow further and further away from each other, there's never been a more important time for ASBSU to be a unifying force, and that's a cornerstone of our campaign. Another thing that's been relatively difficult has been connecting with peers and even from an ASBSU standpoint with constituents at this point in time. It's been really difficult to navigate this kind of new social paradigm that we've entered, where most of the interactions that we're having is with a screen, and then we have to consider what's going to happen after this? How are we going to interact with each other? What will life be like after COVID ends, whenever that may be? And that just looming thought in the back of my mind is constantly pressing, not only from the point of view of someone who represents ASBSU, but as a student who misses friends and misses having interactions with strangers and getting to know the point of view of different people. But BSU has the potential to come back. I know that it won't be like this forever, and Eric and I vow to make sure that it does not stay like this.
Thank you. And Kenneth and Sarah?
Yes, so like everyone else said, obviously COVID-19 has been really hard on students. Students are struggling right now, and it's shown a great divide in the support structures that need to be in place to support students through a situation like this. So something that I have had to challenge, has challenged me this year, is how to find ways that we can still support students through all the different regulations and the ever-changing state procedures that we have to go through. So that's something that, last spring, we were able to have mobile food pantry days where we handed out tons of food on the quad and helped support students through food insecurity. And this year it's been really hard to do that. And so we have been navigating how we can do that. We did one in the fall with 100 pre-packed boxes. And now we're super excited to be able to have one where we get to pack the bags for students, that they get to choose the products that they want in case they have dietary restrictions. So it's been difficult to find ways to navigate around those, but we've been able to do it so that in the end we can be supporting students, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, there are a lot of challenging conversations that have come up this year. Being in, the Provost Search Committee, we're navigating finding the next academic leader for the university. We have so much on our plate, and I think Selene hit the nail right on the head. There is such a massive political divide right now in this country, both on the national scale and at Boise State. We have to find ways to be more tolerant, and that starts with the top and it will come down. And actually having a leadership that leads our peers to do the same is incredibly important.
Thank you.
All right, now starting with Kenneth, let's hop into our following question. What are some issues or initiatives that you would like to build upon or address differently from the current ASBSU administration's tenure?
Right now, student government, again, like I've been saying this whole time, we've gotten away from actually supporting students. We want to invest in our campus partners and in the existing departments on campus, the campus food pantry. There are 34% of students at Boise State who experience food insecurity. That is a number that is atrocious. We have to find ways to support our students, their basic needs, and then we need to invest into counseling services. The number of counselors recommended for a 25,000 student body is so much higher than what we currently have in health services. They're doing all they can, but if I need help now, I can't be waiting a week and a half, 3 weeks into the future. If there's an emergency now, we need to be able to address it as a university and be there for our students.
All right, Eric, same question.
Holy smokes, what a good question. You know, I've been on ASBSU for 2 years now, and I've done a fair bit of research into the prior years of ASBSU. And from my understanding, the issues we have today with failure in transparency and failure in communication is something that's existed for, you know, the recent history. We need to make a change. We need to improve the fundamental aspects of ASBSU. It needs to operate on a level which we expect from Boise State. It's just not doing that right now. What else we need to do is we need to expand access to student funds. Everyone that's watching here today, you guys pay money to ASBSU, and I would wager that most of you guys don't ever see that money back. We want to make sure that when money is spent by ASBSU, it's not towards just organizations that ASBSU legislators are a part of. We want students from across campus to come and write their own bills and resolutions that affect them directly. We want you guys to see direct return on your investment, because $100 is a lot. And you guys should be seeing some return from that.
Jacinta?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. What are some issues or initiatives that you would like to build upon or address differently from the current ASBSU administration's tenure?
So obviously, like Kenneth brought up, transparency is a huge thing. I wanted to actually quote Kenneth because he did an interview with the Arbiter, and he said, "The student government itself has started to stray from its core purpose of advocating for students." And I think that quote is 100% true, and that has happened because of the people that are on the executive council at this moment. That's why it's happening. So he is 100% sure it's because of those people that are in there right now. And if people want to see change, then you've got to vote differently than you did in the past. I think that, yeah, AJ and I are here to build on change, and we're ready to allow voices to be heard. And that's the main reason why we're running, because it's been going on for way too long now. And yeah, we've definitely strayed from the core purpose of what ASBSU is for, which is advocating for students. We're no higher than them. We are students ourselves. And we're ready to do that.
And Kenneth, you can do a 30-second rebuttal to that if you'd like.
I think, what Jacinta just said it's right. Sarah and I have not been in a position to make these changes. And what's important is someone who knows the process and who also knows the problems. We have an internal perspective, and we have seen directly the problems with, inexperience in government that cause issues in the future. And I think it's important to realize that this is a job that is much larger than just the code and constitution job descriptions. There's a lot of work that goes into this role.
And our next question, let's start with Jacinta. In your position, do you plan on engaging with Idaho legislature about budgeting and funding cuts to the university? If so, how do you plan to address these issues that impact students?
Is this directly for me, or is this for me or AJ?
This will be for everyone, but we'll start with you.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. We plan to work on it. AJ has some great ideas too of how we can work with the legislator and the budget cuts. I actually want him to elaborate on it just because he has ideas, if that's fine.
Yeah, I've actually been involved with the legislature in the last few months, talking to them every month or so. Yeah, I'm ready to work with them. I have connections inside with them. And, this whole thing goes back to Boise State accountability. We wouldn't be in this position if the university was accountable. And same with ASBSU, the exec board specifically, because they have all the power. As far as my limited knowledge, the exec board has all the power, and it's their fault and the university staff. So yeah.
All right, we'll turn that over to Kenneth and Sarah.
Yes. Okay. Short answer, no. Long answer, yes. What's actually already been done this year is Sarah and I have been involved with reviving what's called the ISA, which is the Idaho Student Association. It's a collaboration between all of the student governments of public institutions in Idaho. And we recently just drafted a letter that was sent to the legislator on behalf of ASBSU and the other student governments in Idaho. That addresses these budget cuts. It was a response to existential threat of defunding. If we were to lose 50%, let's say 50% of Boise State's budget, we'd have to lay off 50% of faculty and staff. This is a problem that is not simple. It's something that threatens each of our students' success. Entire academic departments would shut down if this were to go through. That is thousands of students being negatively impacted, potentially not having a degree that they've been working on for years to obtain. So long answer, yes, we do plan to work with the legislator but it is specifically for reasons to advocate only for students. It is not to get involved with national politics. It's not to get involved in these partisan issues that impact, that leave out 50% of our student body from the picture. In fact, probably more than 50%. We cannot take sides without inherently excluding students in this process.
And Eric and Solen.
Hi, this is an incredibly loaded question again, and it's a question that the university itself is struggling to deal with at this point in time. What we have here is ASBSU attempting to walk a fine line between advocating for students and making sure that all student voices are heard, and trying to avoid the nature of the topic at hand, which is, as we all are somewhat aware of, how Boise State has been accused of being a diversity indoctrinate for students. And so we have a responsibility to combine our efforts with other universities in Idaho to ensure that we're all on the same page and we're all taking the exact same steps toward making sure that we don't lose our education. We also have to make sure that if Eric and I are elected at least, that we continue to walk that fine line between representing students and ensuring that we're lifting up the voices of those who are underheard. We don't want the state to take away our funding by any means, but that does not mean that we should succumb to their requests to stop our actions and stop our initiatives and stop our purpose. We have to make sure that we're working with other universities, not arguing with them. But we also have to make sure that we're combating the legislature in a way that's respectful and sensible and puts the emphasis on the importance of our education as opposed to the specific actions of ASBSU. And I'll give the rest of my time to Eric to elaborate a little further.
Yeah, Solen said it so incredibly. There is going to be a time and a place where we do have to push for the values that ASBSU, Boise State, and the student body holds. It's not just a sit back and relax type of deal. It's going to take personal connections with senators, representatives, and I'm happy to announce that just today we got the endorsement from Representative John Gannon, which is just so exciting and so cool to see that the legislators already excited to work with our ticket.
All right, and our next question, what are some Boise State specific issues that you would like to approach the State Board of Education with if elected? So we will start with Eric and Solen.
Can you repeat that question really quick?
Yeah, no problem. What are some Boise State specific issues that you would like to approach the State Board of Education with if elected?
the funding is obviously at the front of everyone's mind right now. We can't lose the support for the school right now. I think Kenny said it great. Losing funding would be detrimental to the ability for the school to do its job effectively. And so making sure that that's at the front of our mind when we come into office is going to be the first step. Moving forward, we need to get rid of this idea that BSU is some sort of weird indoctrination place. We're in education. We're a four-year education where we need to promote students coming together and having conversation. That's what this is about. That's what ASBSU should be about. We're not supposed to be a political organization, but we should be okay with having political conversations because that's what it takes to be a grown-up, and that's what it takes to be a valued member of society. Selene, I don't know if you have anything to add to this question.
This is a little bit more specific, but I saw in the chat that somebody commented on the issue of sexual assault on campus, and I believe that is an absolutely pertinent issue that has to be addressed. Right now, Boise State's current approach to sexual assault on campus has everything to do with being reactive and is no way, shape, or form proactive. The president and the vice president have a unique ability to communicate with the university and the different institutions within it to be able to communicate this message. What this could look like is mapping out more areas where students are assaulted more often than not, and then working in those areas specifically to make sure that those areas are safe, as well as adopting more comprehensive programs like the Green Dot program or the Take Back the Night program that allow for women and men or anyone who's been assaulted to share their voice in a safe and comfortable area, while also allowing for students to gain more knowledge on exactly what sexual assault, rape, and violence do to our community and how they impact every single student.
We'll pass it over to Jacinta and AJ.
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and go first. So we need to work together with the school board and the legislator as a team, because right now we're clashing on all levels. And that's one of the reasons why the legislature is threatening to pull funding. So we need to work together. We need to find out how we can compromise and not lose the funding. And Jacinta and I have recently talked to a few clubs and organizations. I'm part of Greek Life. I know how we've been gypped in the past. I've been on the baseball team, the club baseball team, and I know how we have definitely not gotten the funding we need. And I know there's lots of other clubs that are in the same boat. So we kind of got to work together with the education board and figure out how we're going to attack these issues in the right way. And I don't know if Jacinta has anything to add to this. But.
No, yeah, just exactly that. There's so many clubs that even have come to me and said, we are not receiving the same amount of funding that all the other clubs are receiving. And I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. Every single club should be receiving the same amount of funding, no matter what it's for. And yeah, we were just talking to the baseball club and they were expressing those issues that AJ was just talking about. And like another thing they brought up was, why do the kids on the club have to be paying for practices when they're doing them at the school, inside the school's building? So that's another thing that we want to work on too as well.
Thank you. And we'll pass that to Kenneth and Sarah.
Yes, thank you so much for this question. I think just for a little bit of background knowledge for the audience here, the State Board of Education and the state legislator are different. The legislator is going to deal with our funding, and the State Board of Education is there to support our education. So there's three main things that we would want to bring to them. They're going to be OER, food insecurity, and mental health resources. So OER was discussed a little bit earlier with the Vice President of Academic Affairs debates. That is going to stand for Open Educational Resources. So right now, I don't know about any of you, but I'm paying crazy amounts for online textbooks this year, especially. I've paid way more than I ever have. Open educational resources, some classes already do them, but they're not as widespread. So it's going to be a free textbook. They're going to be using these different online resources that professors have put out there so that to help students that they can not only keep those textbooks from year to year, but also not have to pay $100 for an online access code that they're going to lose access to in 6 months. The second one is going to be food insecurity. As Kenny stated earlier, 34% of students on Boise State's campus are food insecure, and that's a serious problem. If you're not feeding your body, you're not going to excel well in your scholars, and you need to be able to do well in school. That's what we're all here for, right? And then the last thing will be mental health resources. Students are struggling right now, and we don't have those resources available for them. And that's something that being able to talk through with fellow educators, they may be able to provide a better insight into how we can help our students on a school level as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next question is, regarding the threats to diversity and inclusion initiatives from Idaho legislators, what is your approach to providing access to diversity programs on campus? And we'll start with Kenneth and Sarah again.
I think what's important here is to acknowledge our university's statement of shared values. In principle, or in the sentiment of it, that statement of shared values is exactly what Broncos stand for. What we have seen in practice is not that. We see, like we've been talking about, this partisan divide in which one half is attacking the other half and the other half is ruthlessly attacking the other. And it's just this endless circle of hatred and intolerance. And so we need to emphasize that we are all here for the same purpose, to gain an education, and the ASBSU should be advocating for all of its students the same. That being said, there are some marginalized populations that are underrepresented in our processes. It's not the president and vice president's job to promote these initiatives. Not promote, that's the wrong word. It's not our job to ensure these things. It's our job to rely on the IESC, where it is their sole purpose to ensure these marginalized voices are heard. It is our job as president and vice president to support that branch and to ensure that these underrepresented populations are successful and are heard in the process. And so our campaign would rely on the IESC and support them as much as possible to do their jobs.
Thank you. And next we'll have Eric and Selene.
Hi. So one thing that is important to keep in mind when we talk about the issues of marginalization and diversity inclusion is making sure that we do not tokenize the members of our community, whether it be members of the Senate, the Assembly, or just community members, into making them just a means of making us look more professional than we are. We want to make sure that if we go out of our way to include marginalized voices, as we should, that we make sure that their voices are actually included, heard, and well vocalized within our community. Another thing that's important is that we not only work with the current infrastructure and power that we have in place, so working with the IESC and placing our full confidence in their ability to uphold diversity and inclusion, but we also have to make sure that we collaborate with the community to ensure that members of clubs, organizations, just individual students can be able to raise their voice. And this goes back to Eric and I's platform, a point on the power to the people. By developing a club senate, as you will, and allowing for delegates from different clubs to have a voice in ASBSU, we also open that up to groups that might include marginalized communities or anything so on and so forth, individual students who are concerned. We give them access to legislation, but we also give them a voice within our community that they might not have otherwise had. It's not the job of ASBSU to speak on behalf of these individuals. Instead, we should allow for these individuals to come to us and voice their concerns. We cannot speak for people who are not like us. No matter what makes you diverse, no matter in what ways we need to include more individuals, it's not our say. So the only way that we can truly include more voices, truly be more diverse and accepting, is by hearing from you all on how we can achieve that and what we need to do to be there for you.
Okay, and Jacinta and AJ.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with both the previous comments. They're great. We need to give everybody an equal platform to be able to communicate everything that's going on. We need to be able to lean on the IESC chairs and be able to take their advice and put it to use, and not only to promote what they're saying, but to also help uplift them. And yeah, I'm drawing a blank here. So Jacinta, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think everybody is, like we touched on before, we're non-biased here. At least that's what we're running on. We are not, nothing is, we don't take into consideration anything political or anything at all. So every single club is going to receive the same amount of funding, and yeah.
Great. And the next question is, what will you do to uplift the voices of marginalized students in discourse on campus? And Jacinta and AJ, if you want to start with that one.
Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, definitely. What will you do to uplift the voices of marginalized students in discourse on campus?
Well, we need to be able to have these difficult conversations, civil discourse especially. We need to make sure everyone has the platform to reach out to their representatives. We need to make sure that everyone has a voice, but we've got to change the structure within ASVSU so that that is possible. Because right now, it's not possible, and it's way too hard for people who have been marginalized or have been discriminated against to make it known. And not only that, but it's too hard for them to actually see change because there's not much happening right now. It seems like we're very stagnant. We have been for the last year at least. And that's one of the reasons why Jacinta and I are getting involved here, because like we keep pushing. There's no politics in ASBSU. It has no place here. So it doesn't matter who you are, what you believe in, you deserve to have your voice heard, and you deserve to be treated equally no matter who you are.
And we're here to get things done. We're not here just to talk. AJ and I, that's everything that we're about. So lately, as AJ has said, we feel that ASVSU has been about all bark and no bite, and we're here to get things done. We're sick and tired of students going to ASVSU or even just Boise State University or the exec council on ASVSU and asking for things and saying, these are problems I have, these are things that are going on at the university, and then absolutely nothing happens. We are sick and tired of that. So AJ and I are here and we're ready. We have been silenced just like the students, and we're ready to get things done, and we're not just talking here.
Eric and Celine.
So again, it might be useful to reference what I brought up in my last speech, but kind of changing directions. I think that our platform on representation is pretty critical at this point in time. With the plan of expanding voting via funding, via campaigning, via making sure that people have places where they can vote, we hope to include a larger portion of the student body into our conversations, and that will lead inevitably to a larger inclusion of people from more diverse or marginalized communities. Similarly, just directly electing senators is also critical. Kenny's put that in motion, and we hope to continue pushing that forward. But most importantly, we believe that providing stipends to students who serve as their representatives or senators is critical. Not only do those stipends work to help incentivize students to be able to actually connect with their community. For example, the University of Idaho pays their students, and as a result, they have office hours, they're required to produce legislation, they're required to go and interact with their communities. We don't have any of that in the status quo. And by making this position not only a volunteer position, but one where students can opt into funding, not only will it help increase the number of students who want to participate in student government, but it'll help us keep those members of student government who are currently in positions accountable for their actions, ensuring that they're truly representing the populations that they were hired and elected to represent, as well as ensuring that we actually take the time out of our days to listen to voices as opposed to just attending one meeting a week. Here we can see that through office hours, we'll be able to actually interact with these students directly, or through town halls where we can have a bunch of students gather and tell us what issues are going on campus. Either way, it all comes down to how well we interact with our community and creating more avenues to interact with the students at Boise State.
Thank you. And Kenneth and Sarah?
I think Celine answered this wonderfully. And yes, I too agree that our student reps should be compensated for their time. I've been in a conversation with one of the political science internship directors to try to create one of those automatic internships for our student reps as another way to compensate them. Budget wise, student government is sitting on a large sum of money, but we don't always have that in reserves. So we can't necessarily afford it at this moment to monetarily support them. Inclusivity wise and ensuring a diversity of opinions, I'd look no further than one of our resolutions that passed very early on last semester. It was titled Invisible Disabilities. One of our members of the student body contacted us describing a horrid situation that they encountered in the Lincoln Garage where they were discriminated against, and they came to us saying we need representation. And working with that student, within a few months, not few months, within a few weeks, we had a resolution that was considered and unanimously passed by student government. It's about finding where we are missing the mark and then acting on it and creating the opportunity to address it. And that's something that I think that the Invisible Disabilities resolution highlights in a wide range of what Sarah and I have accomplished.
Thank you. And this next question will be for only presidents. Addressing unanticipated challenges facing the university and its student population is a key part of the job of the ASBSU president. What do you anticipate will be your most prominent challenges over the year, and how do you hope to overcome them? And we'll start with Kenneth and Kenneth.
Well, I love, oh man, this is a question and a half. So, we can never really anticipate what to anticipate, what I think is important is installing and electing leaders that we know thrive under pressure, that we know will follow some kind of process to accomplish a problem-solving group. The president has the opportunity to create solutions to problems that we encounter. One thing that has been demonstrated through my time as ethics officer is time after time encouraging for our officials, elected and appointed, to get in touch with the larger group of people to collaboratively create a plan for how to move forward. One person alone should not dictate the direction of student government. It is a group effort. And like I said earlier, the president is not the only elected official present. There are 5 other positions in student government who are elected by the same constituency. And it's important that all of us are included in the conversation for how to move forward best.
Thank you. Jacinta?
So one of the things that AJ and I want to accomplish, especially if we get into office, is the entire ASBSU, everybody that's involved in ASBSU, we need to make sure that everybody is on the same page. We are going to go around the table and say, what are you here for? What are you here for? And make sure that every single person is here for the same thing, which is representing every single student's voice. So when that happens, we can all lean on each other, and everyone in ASBSU can be there for each other when challenges come and there's questions that, I may not be able to answer, AJ may not be able to answer. We're all going and rooting for the same thing. We're ready to have all voices to be heard, and so we can all lean on each other for that.
Thank you. Eric?
To respond to your question, Taylor, it's absolutely going to be our ability to effectively get feedback from our constituency. I have full faith in the exec team and our representatives' ability to run an effective student government if we can actually hear from the students what they want. It bothers me that it took an impeachment trial for me to get my first ever email from a constituent. And not only one, but we got like 80. And Selene and I were able to respond accordingly. I met with over 30 of them, with those of them that responded, and I was able to connect with them one-on-one and see exactly how they wanted me to respond with that impeachment. And we were able to act accordingly. What I want out of the students is for them to understand that the presidency is just an outlet for them. Whatever they want, I want to be able to make happen. And then any issue that comes up, it'll be a breeze because we can hear from the students how they want us to respond, and then we can just act how they want us to respond. It shouldn't be a place for personal input. It should be a place to represent the students.
Thank you. And this next question is for vice presidents only. In the role of vice president, you will appoint students in leadership roles and teams that represent the voice of students across Boise State. How do you plan to build a diverse student assembly to team and Senate team to ensure representation and equity in decision making? And Solon, if you want to go first.
Absolutely. So I believe that the real place where we need to start when it comes to including more diversity within the Assembly and the Senate, as well as just ASB and BSU in general, is expanding the scope at which students are aware that ASBSU exists. We can ask for students to come in, we can ask for more diversity and inclusion, but until we have an increase in the student interaction with our ASBSU, that's not going to happen. When Eric and I were out polling and trying to get people to sign our petitions so that we could campaign, we did a bit of guerrilla work, in which case we talked to students out on the street, out on campus. And a big problem that we ran into was students not knowing what ASBSU is, which means that they don't know that ASBSU is there to serve them. They don't know just in general what it is that we have to offer. And so before we can even begin to engage with the question of how we're going to include more diverse people into ASBSU, we have to figure out how we're going to connect with those students in the first place. And again, that's a really critical part of Eric and I's plan. Not only were we looking to bring more awareness to the elections, we're looking to bring more awareness to BSU as a whole. Obviously, after that happens, it'll be a mission of finding the most qualified candidate, reaching out to the community, reaching out to different clubs, organizations, or standout individuals. But again, we can't do any of that until we have an actual presence among the student body, which we do not currently have. So I think that takes priority at the moment.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yes. So first things first, the president and vice president, after elected, they have the whole summer to prepare for the school year and to prepare for what they plan to do and how they want to implement their actions in their platform. So I want to take that time over summer to personally reach out to all the clubs and organizations that we have on campus, which we have over 200, and make sure that they know that this is a leadership opportunity that any of their club members are able to access. And so that way that they know that this is an opportunity that they can apply for, and it may bring in some different perspectives who maybe didn't even think about applying until they had a personal invitation asking them if they'd be interested in sharing a little bit more information about it, and also giving them an actual face that they can have a conversation with if they have any questions or anything regarding it. As far as the application process goes, everything will be redacted. There shouldn't be any bias in the process, and we can have an advisor or someone who is not even near the process take care of that for us, so that we aren't going, oh, I know her, she's awesome. We want to keep that out of it. It's about the qualities that they possess and what interests them and why in their application. It's not about our personal beliefs, and we want to keep that at the door.
And AJ?
Yeah, I mean, I was just an outsider a month ago, and I still have a very superficial understanding of what ASBSU really is. And whenever I was talking, Jacinda and I were talking to clubs and organizations, at least 80–90% of them had no idea what ASBSU is, and that is no one's fault but ASBSU's in the first place. The more people that know about ASBSU, what we're about, it's very easy to get people passionate about things. They go to school here, they care about how things are run and how they're being represented. So the more people that we educate onto what ASBSU actually is, the more opportunity we're going to have for more diverse ideas and more diverse people in general, because when we have a larger quantity of people interested, we have better quality ideas, and that's what we can lean on.
Thank you. Okay, so these next two questions will be questions from the audience. There are a lot of questions, but we won't have time to get through all of them. So they will be forwarded on to your candidates, and then they can reach out to you personally. So this question is for all candidates. Why should the students of BSU respect ASBSU after the ASBSU Executive Council lied to the student body so many times this year about their involvement in the removal of Big City Coffee from campus? And Eric and Celine, if you want to go first.
Wow, what a good job asking a question unapologetically. This is such an important thing to analyze, because I think we can all recognize that a lot of you guys are probably here because of the impeachment. And I don't think there is an excuse for how it went down. I don't think there is an excuse for how student voice was disregarded in a lot of ways in the process. I don't claim to fully understand why the executive team and other bodies made the decisions that they did. I can tell you that from a senator's position, Selene and I did everything we could to keep the students involved in the process, to keep them informed, and make sure that our reactions or our responses reflected what they wanted. It wasn't a space for Selene and I to input our personal decisions. That's how we'll continue into the executive office. We don't want this to be a place where we're making unilateral decisions for anybody. It's just not our place.
Thank you. And Jacinta and AJ?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not trying to attack anybody in here. I'm just very passionate about this. I completely agree. I wouldn't trust the current ASBSU the way it is either. Through my limited knowledge of how it's run, I know that power is not distributed equally, which is fine. But when that power is being abused the way it has been for the last year by some people who I will not name, yeah, you're gonna create rifts throughout the student body. And I mean, so Astrid Wild, I'm sure you guys know who she is, but I want to thank her personally, because without her, I wouldn't know anything that's going on. She's been the one who's leading the charge for transparency. And that is a great thing. We need to have more of that. Everyone on campus, every student, everyone in the public, we're a public school. Everyone should know everything about ASBSU, because that's what transparency is about. And the more you have closed door conversations, the more you have the more you're closed off and acting as like a club itself, which is what ASBSU has been acting as, the less you're actually representing who you're supposed to represent. So yeah, I don't blame the students for being outraged. I mean, that's one of the reasons, that's the main reason why Jacinta and I are actually running for this position, is because we want to see change. And the way things are going, and if they keep going this way, I mean, we're going to reach a point of no return, and these shady values are going to be solidified.
Thank you. And Kenneth and Sarah?
Apologies for my camera being off. I was informed that people couldn't see me, or I was freezing but could hear me. So for this topic of Big City Coffee, it's a really loaded question. You know, what we saw from the executive side was an atrocious act on behalf of, the owners. And we called for a removal as a result of such. When we talk about what is present in the public, not the whole the entire picture is not there. I can talk about processes, but legally we can't talk about, a lot of the situation. Yeah, this is tough. Students should feel confident in their elected leaders' abilities to lead. What we saw was our executive team, myself included, we saw a problem that was not a publicly seen problem, and we responded accordingly. And yes, I will admit that, you know, the vast majority of response that we received was not in favor of big cities removal. Um, but I would hope that there's some kind of faith in the fact that there were unseen things in this process that led exec to behave the way it did.
Yes, I just do want to make it really clear real quick that you know, because of procedural and policy and state and federal laws, not everything can be made public for the students. And as unfortunate as that is, and as much as we want to be able to share everything, state and federal laws supersede ASBSU, and that's just kind of how it is. And I'm so sorry that some people weren't able to get the answers that they would have liked to have.
All right, so we have time for one more question, but we're going to keep the responses to 1 minute for the sake of time. The question is, what do you plan on implementing to reduce the sexual assault harassment that is continuously seen on or near campus? And Jacinta and AJ, if you want to start.
Sorry, yeah, I'm using my phone, so I have to set it up every time. Yeah, so I'm obviously involved in Greek life, and we had a class that we all have to go through in order to just be involved in Greek life. And I think it was a really great class. I think we need more of it. It's a class that not only helps educate people on what's okay and what's not okay with obviously sexual assault, but also with other problems like alcohol and such. We need more of that, because the way culture is changing nowadays, a lot of people don't know what's okay and what's not okay. And it all comes back down to how people are educated and how they understand the risks of what they're potentially doing. So, time's up.
Thank you. And Kenneth and Sarah?
Okay, turn my camera back on. I hope I'm not frozen on screen. So this is a really serious problem that we have on campus. There's no reason that we have individual members of our student body disrespecting the right of another person's body to be autonomous and choose what happens to it. This is just a disgusting problem that plagues our campus. One thing that we can do, and AJ's absolutely correct, education is severely lacking on this campus. I've been in conversations with Danielle Charters. She is our Title IX compliance officer at Boise State. And, you know, we've been trying to brainstorm ways that we can better support victims of this problem and also get ahead of this problem. How do we spread those educational awareness things, and also ensure that our victims have support? It is such a gross problem on this campus, and it all comes back to education and support.
Great. And Eric and Celine?
This is a problem that is personally difficult for me to talk about, but it's also so important that I can't not. I previously touched on this in one of my last speeches, but to reiterate, a big part of the university's issue right now is that all of the policy, all of the programs, all the education policies we have in place right now are incredibly reactive. They are also relatively redundant as well as oversimplified. The education that students are receiving really trivializes the issue of sexual assault, and obviously we see it's not working. Every time I get one of those push notifications on my phone, my heart drops, and they come in constantly. But to reiterate some of the points of what Eric and I are specifically talking about doing, we really want to address the issue of how we approach the idea of education on sexual assault and violence. I mentioned this previously, but adopting programs like the Green Dot program, as well as the Take Back the Night, not only help educate students on issues such as sexual violence, assault, rape, but they also allow for students to share their stories, provide them with resources within our community, as well as ensuring that the university is actually making an attempt to ensure that the student body does not have to be afraid of this happening to them. Another thing that we can do that'll be critical to ensuring that we have safety and safety on campus and ensuring that we have security officers in the right place is doing a mapping of all of the places on campus in which we've seen sexual assaults happen. We've seen this done at other universities, and currently at Boise State, there's no program, or at least to this extent, that's letting students know where this is happening, but also taking the steps necessary to make sure that we have security in those places. We need to make sure that students know that there are 24-hour rides available to them if they ever feel unsafe. And we need to make sure that the students know.
Due to time and the sake of having a minute for every candidate, I have to cut you off. But thank you all for answering the questions. And this concludes the 2021 ASBSU and IESC debates. Thank you for all your questions from the attendees. We will be turning those over to all of the candidates. We encourage you to reach out directly to them. Voting will open Monday, March 22nd at 12:01 a.m. through Tuesday, March 23rd at 11:59 p.m. Fee-paying students will receive an email with the voting link to their Boise State email address, and results will be announced through a campus-wide email on Wednesday, March 24th. Applications for all hired positions on the Executive Council, Funding Board, and Inclusive Excellence Student Council are open now on Handshake and will close Sunday, March 28th. Thank you all for coming and make sure to check out the Arbiter website at arbiteronline.com and follow the Arbiter at Arbiter Online on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on all related campus news. Thank you and have a great rest of your night.